welcome to Smash Writing. And today we're going to be talking about one of two movies that came out over the weekend. One, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which will come out Monday. And today we're talking about Abigail, a movie I have been psyched for from the first trailer. Because the moment I saw that they are kidnappers who kidnapped a little girl who turned into a vampire, I was sold. Yep, you had me. In the movie theater I went. Before I get into this though, I know I already gave you one spoiler warning, but I'm going to give you another one. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a teaser of what I think about this movie. And what I think about this movie is that if you haven't watched this movie yet and want to watch this movie, you should go watch it on the big screen and then come back and check out the story bit of my review. If you haven't seen it and you're interested in my review and you don't want to be spoiled, jump to this time. And with that said, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The movie kicks off with two different perspectives. You have Abigail doing a ballerina recital on stage in front of nobody. And you have a group of people setting up for her kidnapping, which is triggered when she gets to her bedroom and she puts the phone down and she's attacked. But she does try to fight back. She stabs one in the hand with a pencil, but they manage to inject her with this knockout juice and get her stuffed into a duffel bag and load her in the van, and off they go. They drive her to a mansion in the woods where we meet a man named Lambert. They get her tied to a bed. They get Abigail tied up to a bed in one of the rooms with the rule Joey is the only one allowed in the room to deal with the girl, because to limit the amount of voices she can recognize, Joey's it. And she gets that name Joey when Dean keeps pressing everyone for names. And you're not allowed to ask anyone's names. So Lambert gives them the names: Joey, Frank, Peter, Rickles, Sammy, and Dean. To mostly get Dean to stop asking about names. And the job is, Joey takes care of the girl, everyone babysits. And as long as they do all of this, they'll be rich in no time, and Lambert shows himself out. And everyone gets off, and they start to drink, and they're talking, and Dean tries to flex his muscles that he can read everyone, and already has a good idea of everybody. And as Joey points out, he got everything wrong. And then Joey shows off her muscles by accurately predicting everything. And that Frank was a former detective, and Sammy is in it for the shits and giggles and thinks that because she's a hacker, she's not as bad as everyone else. And Peter is the muscle, and Rickles is former military, and Dean is not a professional. This pisses off Frank in a way, who points out that Joey is an ex-junkie because of her candy obsession, which irritates her a little bit, but she goes off to check on Abigail, and they talk a bit. She agrees to take off Abigail's blindfold, and she puts on her mask first, and tells her that she has a son waiting at home. Abigail shares that her dad might not be a great person, and to not expect him to pay for her. It gets to Joey, so Joey goes to talk to Frank, and Frank says, I don't know who her dad is. But he decides he's going to go find out, and freaks out whenever he realizes that she doesn't have a blindfold on because he's not wearing his mask. But he pulls his gun and he forces her to say the name, and it freaks him out because the name she gives is not only a big crime boss, but he is a monster. And Frank even refers to him as the Antichrist, and he wants to leave. And most of the group seems to want to leave when Dean points out, we ain't got any money to leave, but $7 million apiece for the job can pay them plenty to disappear and wherever they want to go. So they decide they're going to lock down the house and make sure there's no one else there. And Dean is beheaded by an unseen person. And Sammy finds the body, and this freaks them all out because This crime lord has a hitter who's known for tearing people apart with their bare hands and being just very evil. So they keep going, and Rickles and Joey come up with a plan that they're going to make sure that they watch each other's back. And Joey goes to talk to Abigail to see if she saw anyone in the house. When Abigail confesses that Frank is the hitter. And he told her whenever he came in and threatened to harm her if she told anybody. Which is enough to get Rickles and Joey to go question Frank. But Rickles is taken out after about 3 steps by an unseen force. So it's on Joey. She pulls her gun and she starts threatening them, and Frank is like, "You're being manipulated by this kid." And he sends Peter up to go question her himself because he's the muscle, the interrogator kind of deal. And that doesn't fly because Joey runs him down in the room, and there's a 4-person standoff in the room with Abigail, who slips out of her binds and goes full vampire, attacking Peter. They barely make it out, and they lock the door behind them, locking her in. Only they can't escape anymore because the outside door is now blocked with an iron cage. And all these wooden panels come down over the windows, locking them in. So they get into a bit of an argument about what they should do. Joey wants to capture the girl again and trade her back to her dad for their lives, begging mercy. The other 3 want to go kill the vampire. So they arm up with pole cue stakes, garlic. Peter has his crucifix, and they can't find her because she's broken out of the room. But they find her pretty quickly. She's on her ballerina stage, dancing with Dean's headless corpse. And all of their weapons don't mean shit to her. She stops to smell the garlic. She starts stabbing Peter about 100 times with his crucifix, and none of them are fast enough or strong enough to get a stake into her, but she's strong enough to stick that stake in Frank's leg. So they have to retreat back to Joey, who points out, this knockout juice did work on her. She was asleep. We can use that. So off they go to find the vampire again. Sammy falls into a pool full of about 100 dead corpses, while Peter finds Abigail, who chases him down, and he manages to rejoin the group, and Abigail is once again overwhelming this group. And they just barely manage to hold her down long enough to inject her with the knockout juice and knock her out. But Sammy's bitten in the meantime, and she's freaking out over this. And when Abigail wakes up, she finds herself locked in the elevator. And she is not answering Sammy's question. Maybe you'll turn, maybe you won't. And this is when we find out what's really been going on here. And that Abigail orchestrated the kidnapping herself. She is the hitter. And everyone who is involved in the kidnapping in some small way have stolen or screwed over her father's business. And she's going to kill them all for daddy. Despite, as Joey puts it, you may do that, but you'll never earn daddy's love. And hits a nerve with Abigail, who tells him whoever lets her out will be allowed to survive. And Joey has to shoot Peter to stop him from opening the door. Big idiot. And they leave Frank alone with her, though, to go tend to Peter's gunshot wound now. And they kind of barter back and forth, and Abigail tells him that there's a secret door in the library on the right-hand side, I believe. And Frank is taunting her because he's not going to let her out, but he doesn't have to. She just bursts down the door. Because of course she can. She was screwing with you. And before she can bite him, though, Joey comes back and she rips off some panels exposing sunlight. And her arm blows up from the moment sun touches it, which incapacitates her while she's healing. And they manage to escape to the library that has a big old window with light coming in. And Sammy decides that since this house had to have been rigged to lock, there has to be a control panel and a reset button which will allow them to escape. So they separate into 2 teams. Sammy and Peter Frank and Joey, which is bad news for Peter because Abigail mind controls Sammy, forcing her into a vampire and using Sammy to kill Peter. She chases the other two back into the library, and Joey uses a silver pan to get a reflection from the sun and takes out Sammy. And that's when the secret door on the left side of the library opens, not the right, like she told Frank. And on the inside of this room, they find Vampire Lambert, who's been at the control of Abigail all of this time, and he has a deal to offer Frank. He's called in the big boss that there's something bad going on at the house, so the boss is coming. And he wants to turn Frank, and together they will kill Abigail and kill the big boss and take over the crime syndicate together. And Frank agrees and is turned and kills Lambert and puts down Abigail. Joey gets her phone back and she runs off. And she has enough time to leave a lovely little message for her son on his voicemail before Frank catches up and starts throwing her around the library, taunting her and telling her that he plans on turning her into a vampire and puppeting her like Abigail did with Sammy and will force her to kill her son, and chucks her off the balcony. And she's saved by Abigail, who together they each try to fight Frank, but even together they're not much of a match for him. He leaves Abigail nearly dead. He bites Joey in the neck and starts trying to puppet her, but he doesn't know what he's doing, and she turns the tables on him, and together with Abigail, stake him in the heart. And explosion of blood! And now alone together, Abigail shares the piece of advice. It doesn't matter how much money you show up with Caleb. All he wants is your presence. That's all that matters. And it looks like it's going to be left on that sweet moment when Daddy shows up. And he goes after Joey, but Abigail puts herself between the two of them and yells at him and like, she was here when I needed someone and not you. You're never here. And it actually gets to him, and he helps Joey up and lets her leave with the warning, you should leave now. Dinner time is soon to be here. And she gets into the van and she finds a lollipop, and we cut to black on this wonderful fucking movie. Jesus, it's bloody, it's gory. Everyone by the end is just soaked in blood from the way these vampires die and just explode in a wave of blood. It is honestly fantastic and wonderful. The casting wise, with Melissa Barrera, watching her continue to go down through this genre and build up a collection and just become so much better with every movie. She was so much fun in this movie too. Just being a badass, she has a great presence about herself in this movie, the way she carries herself. The chemistry she has with the rest of the cast is excellent. Her and Dan Stevens, Frank, bouncing off each other was a lot of fun. Her going back and forth with Abigail, whether it is like a mother-daughterly thing going, or, being tormented by the little vampire. Alicia Weir in this movie rocks so much. She is so much fun to watch in this movie because she is just covered in blood and she's doing these ballerina dance moves in between attacking them and tormenting them, and the way she converses and banners with them, all of it. Top-notch acting from this little girl. And we need to see another movie with Abigail, because with her playing Abigail, my God, she was incredible. But just top to bottom, this acting core group of people were an excellent choice. And while we're talking about actors, rest in peace to Angus Cloud. He unfortunately passed away shortly after he was done making this movie. And it's very sad to see that he couldn't see this movie come to fruition in theaters. my thoughts and family to the my thoughts and feelings to the family. Kind of double spoke there. Now, with that heavy bit of segue to something a bit more fun, shall we? I love the storyline bits throughout this movie. What I mean by that is, whenever you're watching this movie, they don't quite come across as professionals. You see the one slip in the house and alert Abigail at one point that there's someone in the room with her. And then when they're supposed to be babysitting, they're drinking, and you have Dean and Peter trying to get personal information out of Sammy, and even Joey to a point. And she's the most professional one in this room, behind maybe Rickles. And she's taken off Abigail's blindfold and hasn't told anybody about this. And I know she's supposed to be the only one going in and out of that room, but if something goes on or something happens and they have to go in the room, they're exposed now because her blindfold's off. And I love the idea of that paying off later on to where, oh, this was all just a ploy by Abigail. And of course they're not professionals at this, because they're not. Then you have the dueling storylines with Joey wanting to make all this cash and get all this money that she can go and give her son the life and she dreams of giving him, and that he'd want for nothing. But then on the other side of this coin, you have Abigail, who has everything except for the one thing she wants, and that is her dad, her parent in her life to, you know, be with. And even Abigail was like, that's all you have to be, Joey, is be a parent. That's all he wants. And I love how those two stories met and worked off of each other and played together. And all around, fun time. Just this movie was so much fun. Negatives. There was a negative. Some of the humor wasn't really for me. I love the red onion scene. The red onion scene was hysterical. But some of the humor was hit or miss for me. But honestly, that does not matter. Go out. Big screen. Watch this movie on the biggest screen you can find and have a great blood-soaked fun time, as vampire movies should be. S-tier movie at the end of the day. Nothing less I can give it than top tier grade from me. With that said, have a good day, good night, good evening, good afternoon, and as always, bye-bye.